Dear viewers, Melba is embarrassed by the oversized t-shirt Charlie bought her. She meets Pollard at the office, who initially doesn't recognize her daughter. Charlie explains that Melba was rescued from Syria through an opposition acquaintance. Pollard is very grateful. Melba is appointed to lead Charlie's shipping business, with Pollard as a consultant. Melba is concerned about her abilities, but Charlie assures her that he will focus on management and resources.
Chapter 2726. Therefore, when she tried on the dress that Charlie bought, she was speechless to the extreme, and she couldn't help but mumbled, "Is my figure hidden so well? So easy to be underestimated. How can people wear it hard? I am afraid that I will be strangled." Thinking of this, she couldn't help sighing and thinking, "It must be because I have always been subjectively unwilling to show my body, so Mr. Wade has caused such a big error and prejudice. It seems that this will not be possible in the future. Otherwise, he thinks I am a typing princess." Melba sighed, then looked at the dress in front of her and decided to grit her teeth and wear it first. Afterward, she opened the other bag and took out the clothing that was as thin as a cicada's wings. She held the piece of clothing with both hands and took a look. She screamed, and subconsciously threw the piece of clothing out, and then immediately covered her hot face, and her heart rate was almost twice as fast as before. Oh gosh, how could Melba touch her hot face, and muttered in shame, "Why would Mr. Wade buy this kind of clothes for me? It's too explicit. Isn't he unintentional? But before buying clothes, he must be sure, has he seen the style, doesn't he see that this kind of clothes is too explicit? Or, he did it on purpose, but why did he deliberately buy this kind of UN3R wear for me? Is it a deliberate prank, or has a certain nasty taste? Melba feels like this whole person strange. Look at that piece of clothing that was thrown on the floor. She is almost certain that in this life will not wear something so disgusting. However, soon put her mind to the idea of just relaxing an overthrow. Not if you wear this, there is no solution. Wearing dirty, or simply not wearing it is really unacceptable. It seems that this is just barely acceptable. Thinking of this, she didn't even bother to speculate on Charlie's motives, gritted her teeth, and picked up the piece of clothing she had thrown away again. 10 minutes later, the doorbell in Charlie's room rang. He opened the door, and the one standing outside the door was indeed a completely new Melba. Putting on Chanel's customized dress, paired with leggings and white leather shoes, Melba feels a bit noble and reserved. In fact, her dress was worn by the commoner princess in Europe, who had been very popular some time ago, in public, showing her temperament and taste. But, who would know that Melba's reserved and noble dress turned out to be a set of UN3R wear that made her feel very ashamed. Charlie didn't know what was going on inside. Seeing that she was dressed very appropriately, he couldn't help but say with a little sullenness, "Oh, it seems that I have a good vision. This dress is a perfect match for you, and it looks very sized." Melba's face immediately blushed to her neck. Melba thought, the outside is really suitable, but the inside is not suitable at all. I don't know if you are intentional or unintentional. If you are unintentional and you can say it, if you have the intention, then you are too funny. Furthermore, the clothes on the upper body were obviously too small, and she was struck out of breath. But she would never say such words. So she nodded awkwardly and said, "Great master, the clothes and shoes fit well." Charlie nodded, with some doubts in his heart. His clothes and shoes fit, and he didn't know whether his UN3R wear fits or not. However, this kind of question can't be asked, so he simply turned off the topic and said to her, "It's getting late, let's go." "Okay," Melba nodded gently. Charlie asked Isaac to send a car key, and he drove Melba to university from the Shangri-La. On the way, Melba had been looking around curiously before, especially when she went to the center of Aurous Hill. She couldn't help but said, "Aurous Hill is only a second-tier city, how can it be developed so well? It looks like an international metropolis." Charlie smiled and said, "China has been developing at a high speed over the years. In addition to the first-tier cities, there are also largely approved first-tier cities. Aurous Hill is now considered to be a quasi-first-tier city." Melba nodded and said with emotion, "I used to think Aurous Hill was not good enough. It's a medium-sized city, and I didn't expect it to develop so well. It seems that the domestic situation is indeed very different from what the media portrays." Charlie smiled and said, "That's natural. Western media are all lemon essence, which is sour all day long. Melba agrees and said, "It is true. They like to report the smearing content every day when it comes to regions outside." As she said, Melba felt that she was strangling more and more uncomfortable. Thinking about the shameful style, she couldn't help but feel a little depressed, so she deliberately said to Charlie, "Mr. Wade, do you often buy un 3R wear for your girlfriend?" Charlie never thought Melba suddenly talked about this, and while embarrassed, he also replied smoothly, "How could it be possible? Today is the first time." Melba pretending to be surprised and asked, "Is it true?" Charlie nodded and said, "Of course it is true." Melba asked again, "Were you embarrassed when you entered the store?" Charlie sighed, "That's quite embarrassing. There were prosthetic models wearing various un 3R wear all over there. I didn't dare to look at them with my eyes, I could only casually look at them. Pointed a set to a model, and then quickly bought it." Melba nodded lightly and thought to herself, it seems that the style was not intended by Mr. Wade. Then, she saw Charlie talk about it. The matter seemed to be a bit cautious, and she couldn't help but laugh secretly. "I didn't expect that such a powerful character as Mr. Wade would be embarrassed to that level." At 12:30 noon, Charlie drove slowly into Aurous Hill University of Finance and Economics. At this time, the school had reached the lunch break. There were many students walking in groups on the campus road, most of them were walking towards the cafeteria and dormitory. Some seemed to be going to eat out of school. Melba asked Charlie, "Mr. Wade, will my father go to lunch or contact him?" Charlie nodded and said with a smile, "I will send him a voice call, so please don't say anything." Melba knowing that Charlie only wanted to surprise her father, so she agreed. Okay. He parked the car under the administrative office building, and then called Pollard with WeChat. As soon as the voice call request was sent, it was immediately connected to convenience. Then, Pollard's voice came over, "Charlie, what are you doing over there? Is there any progress?" Charlie said, "Uncle, don't urge, my situation is a little bit complicated here, and I can't say a word or two." Pollard asked hurriedly, "Then have you seen Melba?" Charlie replied, "Not yet. The opposition guards are very strict. I'm still trying to find a way." While speaking, Charlie asked him, "Has Uncle eaten lunch yet?" Pollard said with emotion, "I am still not in the mood to eat. I have been upset from last night until now. At first, I called you several times, showing you are not in the service area. There should be no signal on your side." Charlie explained, "There must be no communication signal, so I can't make and receive calls normally, but I have a satellite internet device on my side, which can be connected via satellite. It's just that the traffic fee is a bit expensive." Pollard didn't notice anything abnormal, couldn't help but sigh, "This matter is really too much trouble for you, no matter if you have a chance to see Melba in the future or if you have a chance to save her. When you come out, you must ensure your personal safety." Charlie smiled and said, "Uncle, don't worry, I will bring your daughter back to the country in peace." After that, he hurriedly said, "Uncle, I will hang up first, and I will tell you when there is progress." Pollard had no choice but to say, "Then you must pay attention to your safety." Charlie ended the voice call. Melba beside him couldn't help but ask him, "Then what shall we do next?" Charlie turned off the car and took out 2 disposable masks. After putting it on, he said to Melba, "Put on the mask, let's go directly to your dad's office, he must be there." Melba knew that Charlie wanted to give Dad a surprise, and said with a smile, "You think I put on a mask, my dad couldn't recognize me?" Charlie smiled and said, "I bet, as long as you don't talk, your dad will definitely not recognize you." "Impossible." Melba shook her head, and said confidently, "My dad and I just don't talk very well, but it doesn't mean that our relationship is very tense and rusty. He must recognize me at a glance." Charlie smiled slightly, "If you don't believe me, try it. You can knock on the door later and see if he can recognize you." Melba pouted, "Okay, if you lose, you must invite me to dinner and finish talking." The mask was put on. After the two got out of the car, they walked directly into the office building. Melba followed Charlie, and said in a nervous voice, "Do you know where my dad's office is?" "I haven't been here once." Charlie nodded. "I know, you can just follow me with confidence and boldness." At this time, Pollard was pacing back and forth in his office. The only daughter is far away in Syria, life or death is uncertain, he is naturally very worried, and Charlie has not replied any clear progress. He does not know whether his daughter can escape this disaster. Because of the worry in his heart, Pollard repeatedly lost his mind and made mistakes during class today. He felt that his spirit had been strained to the limit. If there is no news from his daughter today, he can only ask for leave from school temporarily, and then go to Syria in person. He also knows that he is unable to save his daughter, and may not even be able to reach the place where his daughter is detained, but he still hopes that he can be closer to his daughter in space. In that case, he can find something in his heart. Consolation. Just when he was agitated, a knock on the door suddenly rang. His chaotic thoughts were forcibly interrupted, so he could only walk to the door and stretched out his hand to open the door. As soon as the door opened, he saw a young and fashionable woman standing outside, but the woman was wearing a mask. He did not see her looks, so he asked in surprise, "Hello, what can I do for you?" Pollard Watt did not recognize the daughter standing in front of him. This is not to say how strange he and his daughter are, but in his memory, his daughter Melba did not wear such fashionable and feminine clothes. The usual Melba, although it's not a tomboy dress, her dress is always simple and plain, and she rarely wears skirts. Because she graduated from Stanford University, her style of dressing is almost the same as those of programmers in Silicon Valley. Summer is a t-shirt with jeans. In winter, sweaters and down jackets are paired with jeans. And the girl in front of him, at first glance, is the kind who is very elegant and cares about dressing, and she doesn't keep with the style of Melba. Besides, he didn't think about his daughter at all. After all, in his subconscious, his daughter was in Syria, thousands of kilometers away, and it was impossible for him to suddenly come to him. Melba didn't expect that her father really didn't recognize her. She stared at Pollard up and down, and in addition to surprise, she also had some hints in her eyes. However, Pollard was not in that mood at all, carefully trying to figure out the meaning in her eyes. Seeing the girl in front of him staring at him but not speaking, Pollard didn't have the patience to continue spending time here, and directly said, "If there is nothing wrong, please leave." After finishing, he closed the door directly. Melba outside the door was standing stupid. He didn't even dream of it. Dad couldn't recognize her just by wearing a mask. Not only did he not recognize her, but he closed the door. One side of the leaf against the wall at this time smiling, and Charlie looked at her and whispered, "How was it?" Melba said, "The big deal, I want to invite you to dinner at night." Charlie waved his hand, "I can't do it tonight. I have to go home tonight. My wife is still waiting for me at home." Melba asked in surprise, "You are married?" Charlie nodded. "I have been married for 4 years. Melba suddenly felt something in her heart. It was empty, but she adjusted it quickly and said, "Well, I will talk about the meal another day. Anyway, I will stay in Aurous Hill to work for you in the future, and I can honor the bet at any time." Charlie smiled slightly. "Okay, remember this meal first." After that, he pointed to the door of Pollard's office, and smiled, "Would you like to give your dad another chance?" Melba raised her hand a bit aggravatedly and knocked on the door again. She was obviously agitated inside. She opened the door with a bit of sullenness. Seeing that it was the girl, he asked, "What is the matter with you?" Melba stomped her feet, took off the mask directly, and blurted out, "Mr. Pollard, you even don't recognize your biological daughter anymore." When Pollard heard Melba's words, he was shocked. When he saw Melba's face, he shouted in horror, "Melba is really you." Although Melba is standing in front of him, deep in his heart, Pollard still can't believe that the woman in front of him is really his daughter. Because, in his heart, he firmly believes that his daughter must still be in Syria now. There is no possibility that she will suddenly appear in front of him. Especially since he just talked to Charlie, even Charlie hasn't seen her now. Moreover, the United States has not sent anyone to rescue, so the Syrian opposition armed forces who have held his daughter have no chance of releasing her back. 10,000 steps back, even if the Syrian reactionaries are true, she was so compassionate that she could not appear in Aurous Hill so soon. Therefore, at this moment, he thought it was a time disorder, and the whole person was in the mist, and he didn't know how to respond. Melba when she arrived was very excited and very thankful, but don't know why, after Dad didn't recognize her, she suddenly felt a little unhappy. So she looked at Pollard with enthusiasm and complained, "I am a living person standing in front of you, don't you believe me yet?" Pollard hurriedly said, "Belief, I believe Coco. It's how you came to Aurous Hill. It's impossible." Melba shook her head helplessly and turned to look at the wall pointed to Charlie said to her father, "Here, how did I come to Aurous Hill? You will know if you ask him." Pollard stood inside the door frame and didn't know at all. There was a person hidden by the wall outside the door. He hurriedly looked out. It was Charlie who happened to have taken off his mask and faced him. Charlie saw Pollard's eyes. With eyes full of shock and confusion, he smiled and waved his hands, saying, "Hi, Uncle." Charlie, Pollard was even more stunned, and hurriedly asked, "What the hell is going on?" Charlie smiled and asked him, "Can we come in and say that Pollard has just recovered from it," and said excitedly, "Quick, come in quickly." Charlie and Melba entered Pollard's office together. Pollard took Melba and sat on the sofa with her. Charlie shook the mask in his hand and laughed at himself. "It seems like this thing is mine. It's useless." Pollard said impatiently, "Oh, you can tell me what is going on. Didn't you just say that you were in Syria? You two lie to me." Charlie laughed and said, "It's not. I wanted to give you a surprise." Pollard said quickly, "The surprise is indeed a surprise. This is a great surprise." He hurriedly asked, "Tell me, how did you come back in so short time? Did the process go smoothly?" Charlie smiled and said, "It was not smooth at first, but it soon became very smooth. I just met the commander of the opposition and made friends with him. Refreshing, so he let Melba go." Pollard hurriedly looked at Melba on the side, and asked, "Melba, you haven't been wrong there, right?" Melba adjusted her sitting posture and said embarrassingly, "They locked us in the cellar and really wanted to kill us at first, but fortunately, Mr. Wade rescued us in time, otherwise, we would be executed one by one." Pollard is very grateful. Charlie said, "Charlie, you brought Melba back safely. Uncle really owes you a life. From now on, Uncle's old life is yours. What do you let Uncle do? Uncle dares to have a little bit of it. Hesitated, the sky beats 5 claps of thunder and teach me a lesson." Charlie hurriedly said, "Uncle, it was just a little effort, not to mention that you are a good friend of my mother, and I should help you." Melba exclaimed when she heard this, nodded, and said to Pollard, "Dad, and Mr. Wade is the son of Aunt Ann you often talk about." Pollard, "He is the only son of your Aunt Ann." Charlie, Melba has bright pupils in her eyes, and she said to Charlie excitedly, "Mr. Wade, it's true that your mother is the biggest idol in my life. I decided to go to Stanford after I learned about her deeds. And at Stanford, I learned more about your mother's deeds and admiration for her." Charlie couldn't help but be a little surprised when he couldn't describe it in words. He didn't expect that Melba also knew well about his mother. This also made Charlie feel ashamed and embarrassed in his heart. "I don't know much about my mother, and I'm not even as good as an outsider. This is true because I didn't do enough. Otherwise, I should have figured out a way to understand my mother." At this time, Pollard looked at Melba, serious said, "Melba, I have promised Charlie. After he rescues you, you will be the person in charge of Charlie's ocean shipping business. As a consultant, I am obligated to provide you with everything I can provide. For the help of you, so you return home safely this time. Don't run around again. Stay steadfast and work hard in Aurous Hill. We, father and daughter, work together to help Charlie do this business anyway." Melba nodded and said without hesitation, "Dad, don't worry about that. I have already agreed to Mr. Wade." With that said, she hurriedly said again, "I am actually the most worried about my ability. What I experienced in Syria this time made me realize that I do have great shortcomings in all aspects, especially when it comes to seeing people. I was a little too optimistic, so I am worried that I would not be competent." Charlie said at this time, "Ms. Watt, don't worry about this matter. We are doing serious business. We rely on financial resources, planning, resources, channels and contacts, rather than fraud. So you just need to run the company and keep the business smooth. Sort out the resources clearly and understand the connection of resources. The rest is a matter of course." After that, he said, "Look, whether it's Microsoft's Bill Gates, Google's Larry Page, or Tesla's Elon Musk, they are all backgrounds in computer technology, which are commonly known as code farmers. They may not be able to look at people or deceive, but what they really understand is the technology, the market, and how to use their technology. To make products that best meet the needs of the market, so as long as they can do what they do best, they can succeed, and so can you. Mr. Wade, since you have said so, then I will do my best, go and do my best to not let you down. Melba, when she heard this, her originally nervous and bottomless heart really relaxed a lot. However, she was relieved in her heart, but her body could not be relieved. Because she was sitting on the sofa, she felt that her upper body was tightened by improper 3R wear, and she was even a little breathless. Pollard saw the unnaturalness of his daughter, and couldn't help asking, "Melba, what's wrong with you, are you uncomfortable?"